Hi, everybody, and welcome to Final Play Sports. I'm your host, Pete Lubar, and today we're going to talk about Mountain West basketball. The basketball season now is in its second month. Most of the preseason games have been played. Conference games are starting, and so I thought it was time now to really talk about each team and see kind of where we stack up. I'd like to start with the preseason rankings. If you remember, the preseason rankings had Boise ranked number 1, UNM 2, Nevada 3, San Diego 4, UNLV 5, and Utah State 6. So the rest of the teams followed beyond that. You can see that right there. We're going to talk about each team and who's playing well for them. And so here we go. Number 1, Air Force, 3-7 overall. Really no significant victories for Joel Scott's team. They averaged 65 points per game, which is, I think, the bottom of the Mountain West. 46% for the field, so not too bad, and 37% from three-point range. But they have a lot of turnovers, average about 13 turnovers a game. They're led by Ethan Taylor, who's a pretty good senior guard, 6'5", 17.3 points per game. And then they got a center, Wesley, I'm sure I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but Selachowski, a 7-foot center, but only averages 2 rebounds a game, so that's a little interesting. Not a lot to talk about Air Force. They'll probably come in last in the conference. Joel Scott had, 1, 2, or 2 good seasons 20 years ago. Since then, nothing really happened. He went to Denver. He went somewhere else, and came back to Air Force. Just hasn't found that same magic in a bottle. So let's turn now to Boise State. Boise State is 6-3, 4-0 at home. Leon Rice's team has victories over Clemson and South Dakota State. He's also lost to Boston College, Washington State, and San Francisco. All those teams are having really nice years so far. Washington State right now is leading the Mountain West with a 3-0 record, having beaten Nevada, Boise, and Fresno. And Boise plays St. Mary's on Saturday, so a meaningful game for them again. They are 80 points per game that they score, which is pretty good. Second or third in the conference, they give up 68 points, so a 12-point margin there. That's 68 points is one of the better defensive efforts in the conference. They shoot 48% from the field, which is terrific, but just 31% from the three-point range. And they get 18 points per game from the charity stripe. So they get to the line a lot, and they out-rebound their opponents by 18 a game. They're a very tall team. They're led by 6'8", senior forward player of the year candidate Tyson Degenhart. He averages 17 points a game and 7 rebounds. Javon Buchanan is a 6'7" junior, and he averages 12.3 points per game. 6'7" sophomore forward Andrew Meadow gets 11.9, and he looks like a Hanson brother. He must be a son or something of one of the Hansons. Senior San Jose transfer Alvaro Cardenas is a 6-foot guard, averages 9.9. And they get contribution from a couple other places. They have a 7-foot player, Dylan Anderson, and a 6'8" senior Stanley Omar, who gets 9.3 points and 6 rebounds. So a lot of height on that team, which causes problems for teams. That makes them also a good the height helps with the rebounding, but the fact that their guards are so tall and Alvarez Cadenas isn't really all that tall, 6 foot, but their other players are all 6'7" or above, and it leads to one of the taller teams in the conference, and they should have a nice conference season. Let's turn our attention to Colorado State, Nico Medved's team. They are 5-4 overall. They beat TCU a couple weeks ago, which was a nice win. They lost to Washington, Colorado, and Ole Miss. Ole Miss is ranked. Colorado is a pretty good team, so not terrible losses, but not great yet. They shoot 43% from the field, 30% from the three-point line, and they have 12 turnovers a game, so a little bit high on the turnovers. They're led by senior guard Nick Clifford, who's a very good guard, 17.9 points per game, 10.7 rebounds, so one of the highest rebounding guys in the entire Mountain West. And he's 53% from the field, which is terrific shooting, and 30% from the three-point line, which is not as good. And then they get contributions from 6'5 senior guard Jalen Lake, who contributes 15.3 points a game. They kind of are Nick Clifford, and that's it kind of team. And so the record 5-4 sort of lets me know that that's the kind of team they're going to be, maybe 500 in the Mountain West. That's where I think they'll end up. Next, I want to turn my attention to Fresno State. Fresno State's 3-7. They've lost 5 in a row. Looks like they're going to battle Air Force for last place. They have a new coach, Vance Wahlberg. They don't have any notable wins. They shoot 38.6 from the field, which is not very good. 27% from three-point range, which is not great at all. And they have a lot of turnovers, 13.3 turnovers. They're led by junior guard Amar Aguilar, who gets 14.2 points per game. And they get sophomore guard Zayon Collins, gets 13.8 points per game and shoots 48% from the field, so he's one of the better shooters on the team. And then 6'7 forward Mikal Robinson provides 12 points and 6.6 rebounds. I said that I think they might battle Air Force for last place. They don't look like a very good team. It looks to me like they'll have a hard time winning more than 3 or 4 games in the Mountain West this year. Let's turn our attention to Steve Alford's Nevada team. They are 7-3. They have beaten Washington, they've beaten VCU, and they've beaten Oklahoma State. From a loss standpoint, they've lost to Washington State, Loyola, and Vanderbilt, all three having very good starts to the season, so that's not terrible. They get 75 points a game, 10.6 turnovers. They shoot 49% from the field and 40% for the three-point range, so those are good numbers. And they're led by Kobe Sanders, senior guard, 6'9 Kobe Sanders, 15.1 points per game, 4.3 assists, 3.7 rebounds. He shoots 48.3% from the three-point line. They've also got Nick Davison, a 6'10 junior, who puts in 14.6 points and 6.8 rebounds. And Coleman, they got Coleman and Love, both Coleman 6'7", Love is 6'10". They got a lot of size, and I think that's going to be problematic for some of the smaller teams in the league. Steve Alford's a wonderful coach. I think the Nevada team will be towards the high end of the Mountain West tournament and our Mountain West standings, and may compete for a at-large berth for sure. Next, I'm going to turn my attention to New Mexico. New Mexico is 7-3, their best win. They beat UCLA at a neutral site, and they've also lost to St. John's at the Garden, ASU at a neutral site, and sort of inexplicably lost to a very poor New Mexico State team last week at home, which was really a poor loss and really will hurt New Mexico in their bid to get an at-large this year. Lobos average 84.4 points per game, which is one of the highest in the conference, second, I believe. But they give up 76 points a game, and I think their defensive struggles are what will cost them this year. 76 points is just too many. It's second worst in the league, and so they're not great defensively. They're not great shooters either. I could talk all day about New Mexico. 39 rebounds per game, not bad. They are a stealing team, though. They get 10 steals a game and 6 blocks a game with 12 turnovers. So it's interesting that you would have that many steals and that many blocks and yet still go up 76 points a game. Lobos shoot 44% from the field, 35% from the three-point range, 65% from the charity stripe, which is not very good. Lobos are led by all Mountain West contender Donovan Dent. Donovan Dent averages 18.4 points a game, 7.5 assists. I think that's the highest maybe in the country. 48% from the field, but doesn't shoot a lot from outside. Really likes to drive and shoot or dish, and does that really well. Senior Mustafa Amzil averages 14.4 points per game, 6.7 rebounds. He's a high-volume three-point shooter. Shot 63 pointers already this year. Only made 18, so 30%. So high-volume shooter, but not a high-volume maker. And then the Lobos have 6'10 senior Nelly Joseph Jr., who averages 13 points, 10 rebounds a game, so one of the best in the Mountain West, and 1.8 blocks. And they get a nice contribution from True Washington, also in double figures with 11.6, 4.8 rebounds, and 2.3 steals. New Mexico is really interesting because I think they're a really good team, but they don't really like to play defense, and they give up a lot of three-pointers. And I think some of the better three-point teams will have a field day with New Mexico. And New Mexico's not all that big, so they've got some size, but I think the bigger teams, Nevada will give them trouble. I think Boise will give them trouble. So New Mexico and probably Utah State. Utah State's pretty tall as well. We'll get to that in a minute. But New Mexico's probably slated for 4th or 5th in the conference. Let's turn our attention to San Diego State. And they're ranked now 23rd in the nation. They're 7-2. They've won 4 in a row. They've beaten Creighton, who was 21 at the time. They've beaten number 6 Houston. So Brian Dutcher, once again, has put together a good team. Their losses are to Oregon and Gonzaga, so no shame in either one of those losses. They average 75.7 points per game. They're also one of the best teams in terms of defense, limiting opponents to about 67 points a game. They're 46% from the field, 38% from the three-point line, 6.6 blocks a game, and 6.6 steals a game. The Aztecs are led by 6'7 sophomore guard Miles Bird. He averages 13.1, 4.6 rebounds, and 2.4 assists. Nick Boyd, another senior guard, 13 points, 4.8 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 42.3% from three-point range, which is quite good. And then they also have another guard, sophomore B.J. Davis, contributing in double figures with 11.1 points per game, 4.1 rebounds. And then they got two really big guys, a freshman Magoon Gwath. He's only averaging 7 points and 4 rebounds, but he's a big presence in the middle. And then you got 6'10 Jared Coleman-Jones with 7 points and 4 rebounds. By and far, San Diego State looks to be the deepest team, and they have the most marquee wins. I fully expect them to win the regular season conference. Let's turn our attention to San Jose. San Jose is 5-6. Really no wins of note. They did beat UTEP, but I don't think UTEP's that good this year. They've got a couple of bad losses. This is Tim Miles' second year, I believe. And they average 75.2 points per game. That's sort of towards the bottom of the conference. 10 turnovers a game. They shoot 46% from the field, 33% from three-point range. They're led by senior guard 6'5", Josh Udehe, and he's 16.7 points, 4.5 rebounds, 51% from the field, so a good shooter. And so they have another junior guard whose name escapes me right now, but is averaging 13.3 and 3.2 rebounds. Tim Miles' team is playing hard. They played New Mexico a couple of weeks ago. I watched some of that game. They were leading New Mexico as much as, I think, 15 at some point, and lost down the stretch. But I think they're going to be tough at home. They'll probably win a few. They'll probably beat some teams that you didn't think they would beat. And so, Tim's a pretty good coach. Let's turn our attention to Utah State. Utah State is 9-0, and they've beaten Iowa. So that's their one win. I'm not sure Iowa's all that great this year. They're, I think, 7-3, and maybe picked for 6th or 7th or 8th in the Big Ten. Utah State's a high-scoring bunch, so they lead the conference with 87.6 points per game, 48.9% from the field, 35.6 from the three-point line. They average 41 rebounds per game, 9.9 steals, and 11.2 turnovers. Aggies are led by 6'3" senior guard Ian Martinez, 18.4 points, 3.3 rebounds, and 3 assists. 22 of 51 from 3 points. So he's a pretty good three-point shooter, 22. He's a high-volume shooter as well, but actually makes his. We've got Mason Falsalev, a 6'3" sophomore, 16.3 points and 6.6 rebounds and 2.7 assists. And Dexter Akano, 6'5", senior guard, 10.1 points, 52.4 from the field, and 44% from the three-point range. Aggies are a really good team. I just don't know. And they've got some size. They've got a 6'11" guy, Aubin Gadaresi, and a 6'8" dude, Carson Templin. They're providing 7-8 points a game. They've got good size. They're 9-0. So they've beaten everyone on their schedule, but their schedule is very light. And other than the Iowa win, they really haven't played anyone. So we just don't know if they're that good or they just haven't played anyone yet. And so it's kind of hard to tell really where they fit. But they're going to be, my guess, towards the top of the Mountain West standings. So, and if you don't play anyone, it's like having a Red Bull with the Mona Lisa. Let's turn our attention to UNLV. UNLV has beaten no one of note yet. They've beaten New Mexico State, who isn't very good. They've beaten Pepperdine, who's not very good. So Kevin Kruger's team is they're 4-4. They've beaten 4 teams. They've also lost 4. They lost to Memphis, Mississippi, Northwestern, and Creighton. So all the teams that you would like to get a marquee win against, they've lost all of those. They score 72.9 points per game, 10.8 turnovers, so at the top, near the top of the league in that, 44% from the field and 37 points from three-point range. 6'1" sophomore guard Deaton Thomas Jr. leads the team with 16.8 points per game and 3.6 assists. He actually shoots better from three-point range than he does from the field. He shoots 45% from three-point range, which is very good. They've got a 6'11" kid in Jeremiah Cherry who's averaging 11.8 points a game and 6.4 rebounds. And they've got a 6'4" senior guard, Jalen Bedford. He's got 10.9 points per game and 3.3 rebounds. It's a fairly deep bench with several other players averaging 8 a game. So UNLV is a team, I think, that has the depth maybe to win, but they just haven't been able to pull that together yet. And so maybe it's a team that will come together later in the season, and maybe Kevin Kruger can get some wins. They'll certainly be tough at home as they always are, but whether they can win on the road in this league remains to be seen. Finally, we're going to talk about Wyoming. Wyoming is 5-4. They nipped Tulane earlier in the season. They've lost to Texas Tech, Loyola Marymount, South Dakota, new coach Sundex Wicks. Team is no bad losses, I guess. If you look at that list, South Dakota State's usually pretty good. Texas Tech is usually pretty good, and Loyola Marymount looks to be very good this year. Wyoming averages 74.4 points per game, 41.6 rebounds, 14 turnovers. So you can see where Wyoming's having some trouble. And they shoot fairly well, 45.2 from the field, 45.2%, and 32% from three-point range. They're led by senior guard Obi Agben, 18 points a game, 3 rebounds, 3.9 assists. They've got 6'2" senior guard Kobe Newton, who averages 10.9 from the field and 46% from the floor. And so they have everyone that gets 21 minutes or more for the Cowboys is a senior. So they're a veteran team. They weren't very good last year. They don't look to be very good this year. They'll probably finish towards the bottom of the Mountain West standing. So I'm going to create a new order based on all that I've just given you and based on the results that we've seen. And I'm predicting that San Diego State will finish first in the league this year. Boise will finish second. Utah State third. I'm picking New Mexico to come in fourth. Nevada fifth. UNLV sixth. CSU seventh. San Jose State will be eighth. Wyoming ninth. Fresno State will be 10th. And I believe Air Force will come in last. So that's the new order. I will update this in a couple of weeks after we find out how conference games go. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube page. And if you need to contact me, my contact information is shown here. Thanks for listening and have a great day.